Picture this. It is a crisp Tuesday morning in 1955. The rich aroma of percolating coffee wafts through a pristine, pastel-colored kitchen. Outside, a gleaming two-tone Chevrolet Bel Air sits in the driveway of a freshly built, identical suburban home. To many people looking back, this specific image is the ultimate American dream, fully realized and perfectly packaged. But what was it actually like to wake up, live, and breathe in the United States during the 1950s? Was it truly that flawless golden age of milkshakes, rock and roll, and white picket fences that movies always show us? Or was there a much more complex, perhaps even darker reality hiding just beneath that glossy Technicolor surface? Today, we are going to strip away the nostalgia and step into a time machine. We're going to explore the roaring engines, the silent fears, the cultural revolutions, and the everyday lives of Americans in a decade that changed the world forever. To understand the 1950s, you first have to understand the collective sigh of relief that birthed it. For over a decade, Americans had endured the grueling hardships of the Great Depression, followed immediately by the devastating global trauma of World War II. When the war finally ended in 1945, there was a desperate, almost hungry desire for normalcy, peace, and prosperity. And boy, did prosperity arrive. The United States emerged from the war as an unprecedented economic superpower. Factories that had been churning out tanks and bomber planes practically overnight retooled their assembly lines to produce cars, refrigerators, and washing machines. Suddenly, there was money to be spent, and a new generation of veterans had the means to spend it. Thanks to the GI Bill, millions of returning soldiers were offered affordable mortgages and free college educations. This single piece of legislation fundamentally redesigned the American landscape. It triggered the greatest mass migration in the country's history, not across the globe, but just outside the city limits. Welcome to the birth of the modern suburb. Imagine a place where every lawn is manicured, every street curves gently, and every family looks somewhat like yours. Places like Levittown, New York became the blueprint. Houses were mass-produced using assembly line techniques, popping up by the thousands. For a few $1,000s, a young family could own a piece of the American dream. This suburban explosion created a culture of intense conformity. There was a spoken and unspoken rulebook on how to live. Men put on gray flannel suits, commuted into the city to work for massive corporations, and were expected to be the sole breadwinners. Women, on the other hand, were pushed heavily into the role of the cheerful, flawlessly dressed homemaker. Society told women that their ultimate fulfillment should come from a spotless kitchen, well-behaved children, and having a hot dinner ready the exact moment their husband walked through the door. But this new suburban utopia needed to be furnished, which brings us to the explosion of consumerism. Shopping became an American pastime. People didn't just want things, they felt it was their patriotic duty to buy them. And right in the center of this buying frenzy was a glowing, magical box that would alter human behavior forever: the television. By the end of the decade, almost 90% of American homes had a TV set. Families would gather in the living room, eating their newly invented Swanson TV dinners, captivated by shows like I Love Lucy and Leave It to Beaver. These shows didn't just entertain, they instructed. They broadcasted the idealized version of the American family right back into the homes of actual American families, reinforcing that deep desire to fit in and be perfectly normal. However, while the parents were busy trying to keep up with the Joneses, something entirely new was brewing right under their roofs. Before the 1950s, you were a child, and then you went to work and became an adult. There was no in-between. But the economic boom meant that young people suddenly had disposable income. They had part-time jobs, they had allowances, and most importantly, they had free time. For the first time in history, the teenager became a recognized, targeted demographic. And these teenagers wanted their own culture. They found it in the rebellious sneer of James Dean, the brooding intensity of Marlon Brando, and the scandalous hip movements of a truck driver from Mississippi named Elvis Presley. Rock and roll had arrived. Born from African-American rhythm and blues, rock and roll was fast, loud, and incredibly threatening to the older generation. Parents were terrified. They saw this music as a corrupting force, a chaotic noise that encouraged delinquency and disrespect. But the youth couldn't get enough. Drive-in movie theaters became the ultimate weekend hangout. Jukeboxes blared in diners, and the classic American car became a symbol of ultimate freedom. A teenager with a car could escape the watchful eyes of their parents and carve out a piece of the night for themselves. Yet, it is crucial that we look beyond the sock hops and the chrome bumpers, because while teenagers were dancing to Chuck Berry, their parents were quietly living with an underlying, suffocating anxiety. The 1950s was the dawn of the atomic age and the deep freeze of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a terrifying standoff, both armed with nuclear weapons capable of wiping out humanity. This wasn't a distant fear, it was an everyday reality. Imagine being a school child in 1953. In the middle of your math lesson, an alarm rings. You don't panic because you've practiced this a dozen times. You immediately drop to the floor, crawl under your wooden desk, and cover the back of your neck with your hands. The duck and cover drills were a regular part of life, a bizarre psychological band-aid designed to make citizens feel like they had a chance against an atomic bomb. In the suburbs, families were digging giant holes in their pristine backyards to install underground fallout shelters, stocking them with canned beans, bottled water, and gas masks. This intense fear of the Soviet Union bled heavily into domestic politics, creating an era of intense paranoia known as the Red Scare. Spearheaded by Senator Joseph McCarthy, a frantic witch hunt swept the nation. Anyone could be accused of being a communist sympathizer. Hollywood actors, writers, government employees, and ordinary teachers saw their lives and careers completely destroyed by rumors and unproven allegations. It was a dangerous time to be different, to hold unconventional opinions, or to stand out from the crowd. The pressure to conform wasn't just about looking good to your neighbors, it was about proving your loyalty to the nation. And speaking of standing out, we have to talk about the most glaring contradiction of the 1950s American dream. The glowing promise of prosperity and suburban bliss was not extended to everyone. In fact, it was aggressively denied to millions. For African Americans, the 1950s was not an era of carefree abundance. It was a period of systemic, violent oppression. In the South, laws enforced strict racial segregation, separate schools, separate drinking fountains, separate seats on the bus. But even in the North, redlining practices made it nearly impossible for Black families to buy homes in those brand new suburban utopias like Levittown. The post-war economic boom was highly racialized. But this immense pressure finally caused the cracks in the system to shatter. The 1950s became the crucible for the modern civil rights movement. In 1954, the landmark Supreme Court case Brown versus Board of Education ruled that segregated schools were unconstitutional, sending shockwaves through the nation. The following year, a 14-year-old boy named Emmett Till was brutally murdered in Mississippi, a horrific event that awakened the conscience of millions when his mother bravely chose to have an open casket funeral. And just a few months later, a seamstress named Rosa Parks quietly refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery, Alabama bus. Her single act of defiance sparked a massive year-long bus boycott, led by a young, charismatic minister named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The 50s wasn't just a time of quiet conformity. It was the intense, bubbling pressure cooker that made the explosive revolutions of the 1960s inevitable. So, what was life really like in the 1950s? It was a decade of astonishing dualities. It was an era where human beings touched the very edge of space, launching satellites that beeped across the starry sky, yet still struggled to treat their own neighbors with basic human dignity on Earth. It was a time of unprecedented wealth, sparkling new kitchens, and undeniable optimism, shadowed by the constant, creeping fear of nuclear annihilation. It was the birth of the teenager, the golden age of television, and the spark of civil rights. The 1950s shaped the modern world in ways we are still feeling today. The highways we drive on, the consumer culture we live in, and the music we listen to all have their roots in this vibrant, contradictory decade. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't simple, but it was a fascinating turning point in human history. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more deep dives like this. Make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure through history. If you're curious about what happened when the pressure cooker of the 50s finally exploded, click on the video on your screen right now to explore the wild, revolutionary era of the 1960s. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.